My mom refused to help when I asked to borrow $10,000. Years later, they lost all. And the choice I made afterward left them frozen in complete shock. I'm Alan, 32, male, the reliable one. The guy who fixed the sink, covered the bills when Dad's hours got cut, and lent money I never saw again. Meanwhile, my younger brother Kyle could breathe and get a standing ovation. Mom called him Little Genius because he once reset the Wi-Fi. For years, I didn't complain. I thought being the dependable one meant someday they'd see my worth. Turns out being dependable just means you get depended on until you're empty. I'm a carpenter. Custom furniture, small remodels, basically anything involving wood and stress. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. Nothing beats watching something solid come out of nothing. My buddy Eric and I had been working for months on what we thought was our big break, opening a workshop downtown. We had investors lined up, equipment rented with deposits down, deliveries still on hold, and a signed lease for the place. It felt like all the late nights and busted knuckles were finally paying off. Then, 2 days before the launch, Eric disappeared. Not took a break, disappeared. I mean, phone off, social media vanished, took all the money and dipped to who knows where. He drained our business account clean. Every dollar, including the $5,000 I'd borrowed from the bank under my name. I didn't even have time to get angry. Clients were already expecting deliveries, rent was due, equipment was on hold. I spent 3 days calling every number I could, tracking down old contacts, even messaging his sister on Facebook. Nothing. The guy went full ghost mode. When I finally sat down and looked at my account balance, I felt sick. Negative numbers hit different when you know you earned that money with your own hands. For the first time in years, I swallowed my pride and drove to my parents' house. They lived in the same place I'd helped them refinance back when they were struggling. The irony wasn't lost on me. Mom greeted me with that fake surprise, like she didn't expect me to knock on the door I'd practically built. "Alan, you look tired," she said, stepping aside. "You've been working too hard again." "Yeah, about that," I said, sitting on the couch that I literally made for them 5 years ago. "I'm in a bit of trouble. Eric took off with our business funds. I just need a loan to get back on my feet. I'll pay it all back, you know I will." Dad was sitting in his recliner, scrolling on his tablet like I'd interrupted a world summit. "How much are we talking?" he asked flatly. $10,000, I said. "Just enough to cover the debt and hold things together until I start new jobs." He whistled low. "That's a lot of money, son." "Yeah," I said. "And I wouldn't ask if it wasn't serious. I've helped you guys plenty when things were tight." That was the part that set him off. He leaned forward and said, "Just because you helped us doesn't mean we have to help you." I thought he was joking. I even laughed. "Good one, Dad." He didn't smile. Mom crossed her arms. "You've always been independent, Alan. You'll figure it out. You always do." I just stared at them. My brain couldn't decide which emotion to process first, shock, anger, or the urge to walk out before I said something I'd regret. "Right," I said finally. "Independent. That's what you call it when you forget who's been paying your power bill half your life." "Watch your tone," Dad said, eyes narrowing. I stood up. "Don't worry, you won't have to hear it again." Mom tried to soften it with her voice. "Don't make this about the past. We just can't help right now." "Sure," I said. "You can't." "Got it." I walked out without another word. They didn't follow me, didn't call, nothing. That drive home was quiet. Too quiet. I remember gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles hurt. The whole way back, I kept replaying Dad's voice in my head. "Just because you helped us doesn't mean we have to help you." You'd think years of being treated like the backup son would make you immune to disappointment, but that one hit different. By the time I got back to my place, reality had already set in. I sold some of my tools to cover the immediate debts. The bank wasn't forgiving either. Sympathy isn't a checkbox on loan forms. But here's the thing. I'm not the type to stay down. If no one was coming to save me, fine. I'd save myself. I made a quiet promise that night. The next time my parents heard my name, it wouldn't be because I was asking for help. It would be because I didn't need them anymore. And trust me, I kept that promise. A week later, my phone buzzed. Mom flashed across the screen. First call from her since the "just because you helped us" speech. For a second, I thought maybe guilt had kicked in. Maybe they realized how cold that talk was. I wiped my hands on my jeans and answered. "Alan, honey," she said in that voice she uses right before saying something I won't like. "We're having a family dinner Sunday. Your dad and I have an announcement." "Announcement?" I repeated, a little skeptical. Yes, it's important. We'd really like you to be there. I hesitated, but said yes. Part of me still wanted to believe maybe they came around. Maybe they wanted to help, after all, or at least talk things out. I didn't want their money anymore. Well, not unless it came with an apology. But some part of me hoped they'd show they actually cared. So that Sunday, I showed up. Same house, same furniture, same fake welcome. Kyle was already there, leaning on the counter like he'd just come from a shampoo commercial. "Hey bro," he said, giving me that smug grin that made me want to sandpaper my own eyes. "Kyle," I said flatly, kicking off my boots. "Still living the dream?" "Trying to," he said, laughing. "Big things coming." He always had big things coming, never finished things, just coming. Mom set the table like it was Thanksgiving, roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, the works. It was weird. They hadn't cooked this nice in years unless someone got promoted or pregnant. I sat down across from Kyle. Dad cleared his throat like he was about to deliver a corporate presentation. "Your mother and I wanted to share some exciting news," he said. "We've decided to help Kyle with a down payment on a house." I blinked. "What?" Mom smiled proudly. "We're putting $100,000 toward the house to help him start his life." He and Jenna found a nice place near the lake. I thought I misheard her. "You're giving Kyle $100,000? Dad nodded like it was the most natural thing in the world. He's at that stage in life where he's ready to settle down, start something stable. I looked between them, waiting for the joke. None came. "You refused to loan me $10,000 a week ago when I was drowning," I said, keeping my voice calm but sharp. "Now you're just handing him $100,000. Are you serious right now?" Mom sighed as if I was the one being unreasonable. "Alan, that situation was different. You were involved in something risky. Kyle's buying a home. It's a smart investment." "Risky?" I said, laughing dryly. "I build furniture, Mom, not slot machines." Dad cut in. "Don't start. Your brother's worked hard for this. He's earned our trust." I looked at Kyle. "Earned it how?" "He's had 3 jobs in 2 years. The guy changes careers like most people change socks." "Hey," Kyle said, defensive now. "I've been saving. I've been planning," I shot back. "With what, your moral support fund?" "Enough," Dad said, raising his voice. "This isn't about competition. You made your choices." Kyle made his. I leaned back in my chair, biting my tongue. The room went quiet except for the sound of Mom refilling her glass of water, like she was trying to drown the tension. "You know what?" I said finally. "You could have just said you don't care. Would have saved me the drive." "Don't be dramatic," Mom said, giving me that dismissive tone she's perfected over the years. "We still love you." "Yeah," I said, "just not enough to treat me like family." Dad slammed his fork down. "You're being ungrateful. Kyle never talks to us this way." "Kyle never had to," I said. "You hand him everything." He stood up. "You need to leave, Alan. I won't have you ruining this night." "Fine," I said, standing too. "Wouldn't want to ruin the celebration of hypocrisy." "Don't come back until you've learned some respect," he snapped. I laughed once, short and humorless. "You mean until I forget this conversation?" "Yeah, not happening." Kyle tried to speak up, but I didn't even look at him. I just walked out. Mom didn't follow. Dad didn't stop me. Door slammed. End of story. Except it wasn't the end. The next morning, I checked my bank app. My loan payment was due in 2 days. I had 2 options, sink or start selling, so I sold. Back then, I still owned a small house I'd fixed up myself. First went my custom saws, then my table planer, then the house itself, the one I bought and remodeled with my own hands. Watching strangers tour, it felt like watching someone date your ex while you're standing right there. I used the money to pay off every cent I owed. What was left went to a deposit on a small apartment that looked like punishment for existing. The bathroom had more mold than tile. The walls smelled like someone had been cooking disappointment for 20 years straight, but it was mine, paid for by me, not them. For a while, I took whatever work I could get. Repair jobs, furniture restoration, assembly gigs for people who couldn't tell a screwdriver from a hammer, long days, longer nights, and every time I'd start to get tired, I'd think about that dinner table, that smug smile on Kyle's face, and those words from my dad, "You made your choices." Yeah, I made my choices. Now it was time to make them regret theirs. That night, I sat in my crappy apartment sketching new designs by lamplight. My hands were sore. My back was killing me. But for the first time in a long time, I felt sharp again. I wasn't just going to rebuild my life. I was going to do it so well they'd choke on their regret. But starting from zero isn't poetic. It's ugly. It's cold mornings where your breath fogs in your own apartment because the heater only works when it feels like it. It's eating microwave noodles at 2 a.m. because you're too tired to cook and too broke to order out. It's an air mattress that keeps deflating in the middle of the night so you wake up on the floor feeling like life's punching you in the spine just to remind you you're still alive. I'd wake up before sunrise, shove a granola bar in my mouth, and head out with my toolbox. I took every job I could get. Cabinet repair, fixing busted porch steps, building someone's doghouse. Didn't matter. If it paid, I did it. There were days I'd haul my tools across town on the bus because I couldn't afford gas. Ever tried holding a drill and a bag of screws while standing on a packed bus? It's a special kind of humbling. One time a woman hired me to repair her dining table. Said she just needed it sanded and refinished. I spent 10 hours scraping off layers of old varnish, breathing in what was probably 50 years of regret. She came home, looked at it, and said, I thought it'd be shinier. Paid me in exact change, coins included. I drove home laughing, not because it was funny, but because if I didn't laugh, I'd probably jump off the roof. Still, there was something different this time. For the first time in years, no one could say they made me. No one could take credit for my effort. Every board I sanded, every nail I drove, it was all mine. The loneliness was heavy, though. Nights were quiet. Sometimes I'd scroll through my contacts just to see how few people were left. Family cut off, friends scattered. The guy who used to be my business partner probably somewhere sunbathing with my money. Once a week, I'd treat myself to a burger from this small diner down the street. The waitress there, middle-aged and always cheerful, started recognizing me one night. She looked at me and said, "Rough week?" I must have looked worse than I thought because before I could answer, she brought me an extra basket of fries on the house. I swear I nearly cried over those fries. Months went by like that, working, eating cheap, sleeping, repeat. My body hurt constantly. My hands were calloused and my bank balance looked like a bad joke. But slowly things started shifting. A guy from one job told his neighbor about me. The neighbor hired me to build a custom bookshelf. Then his coworker wanted a kitchen island. Word of mouth became my marketing strategy. I didn't have money for ads or a website, but I had something better, results. I'd show up early, stay late, and actually do what I promised. People noticed. A few regulars started calling me their go-to guy. The kind of phrase that doesn't seem like much until you've been invisible for years. By the end of that first year, I had more work than I could handle. I wasn't rich, but I was stable. Rent was paid on time. My fridge had more than instant noodles. And I finally replaced the air mattress with a used futon I found online. Progress. There were still bad days, like the time I dropped a plank on my foot and had to finish a job limping for 3 hours, or the time my truck broke down in the middle of winter and I had to walk 2 miles in freezing rain carrying my tools like a walking Home Depot ad. But each time something went wrong, I told myself, at least no one can say they bailed you out. That became my motivation. One night I was working late finishing a custom dining set for a client. I remember sanding the last edge covered in sawdust when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Normally I'd ignore it, but something told me to answer. "Is this Alan?" a deep voice asked. "Depends who's asking," I said, half joking. "This is Connor. I got your number from a client. I hear you're the guy to call for custom work." I leaned against the table, surprised. "That's me, I guess. What do you need built?" "I'll explain in person," he said. "You free tomorrow morning, 9 a.m.? I'll text you the address." Before I could even say yes, he hung up. I stared at my phone, half annoyed and half curious. I'd worked with all kinds of people, homeowners, small shop owners, a couple contractors. But something about his voice sounded different, confident, like he wasn't calling to ask if I could do the job, just when I could start. The next morning, I showed up to the address he texted. A big property outside the city. The kind of place with its own gate and a driveway that feels longer than your entire career. I parked, double-checked the address, and muttered, "No way this guy needs cabinets." The front door opened, and out walked a tall, older man in his 60s with silver hair and calm face that said he'd seen everything and still didn't care. He wore work boots and a flannel shirt, old-school type. "You must be Alan," he said, shaking my hand firmly. "Heard a lot about you. Let's talk business." He led me inside to a huge room filled with unfinished furniture pieces, blueprints, and power tools that looked untouched. "I'm renovating this place," he said. "I've had 3 contractors bail on me already. They all talk big, but none deliver. You come highly recommended. Think you can handle it?" I looked around, nodding. "I can handle it." He smiled. "Good answer. Let's see what you've got." I didn't know it then, but that handshake would change everything. That one job with Connor wasn't just another paycheck. It was the start of something much bigger, something that would make every second of suffering worth it. Connor wasn't the type of guy who handed out compliments or fake smiles. He was sharp, old school, the kind of man who built an empire before the internet made it easy. And from day one I could tell he respected work, not words. He'd watch me measure twice, cut once, and nod like he was taking mental notes. He didn't interrupt, didn't hover, didn't micromanage, just observed. I finished his flooring project in record time. 2 days later, he called me again. "You free this week?" he asked. "For you? Depends. Am I getting paid or volunteered?" I joked. He chuckled. "You'll get paid. I've got more work." And that's how it started. A new job every week, always bigger than the last, fixing staircases, building custom furniture, restoring an old oak table that belonged to his late wife. I poured everything into the work, maybe because it was easier than thinking about everything I'd lost. One morning, I showed up early and caught him standing in his workshop, staring at that same table we'd been refinishing together. He had his hands in his pockets, eyes distant. "She loved this table," he said quietly. "Used to say it was the only thing in the house that didn't complain when she spilled wine." "Good table," I said, sanding the edge, still holding strong. He gave a small smile. "That's why I kept it. Reminds me some things are worth fixing." That's the thing about Connor. He didn't give advice like a sermon. He just dropped sentences that stuck to you for days. We started grabbing lunch after big jobs. Always the same diner a few miles down the road. The waitresses knew his name. He'd sit in the same booth by the window, order black coffee and a sandwich, and ask about my week. "You ever take a day off?" he asked once. "Yeah," I said, "once. Back in 2015. He laughed, shaking his head. "You're young. You'll burn out if you don't slow down." "Slowing down's a luxury I can't afford," I said. That caught his attention. "Debt? Something like that?" He didn't push right away, just nodded and changed the subject. But over the next few weeks, he kept asking questions. Not nosy, just curious. One day I finally told him everything. We were having lunch, same booth, same coffee that tasted like motor oil. He asked about my old business again, and this time I just told it straight. I told him about my old friend, how we were supposed to open a workshop together, how I trusted him with the finances, and he ran off with every dime. How I was left to face the debt, sell my tools, sell my house, and start over. I told him about going to my parents for help, the way they looked at me like I was asking for a kidney instead of a loan. The exact words Dad said, "Just because you helped us doesn't mean we have to help you." Connor didn't interrupt. He just listened, elbows on the table, hands folded like he was hearing a business deal gone wrong. When I finished, I half laughed. Anyway, long story short, I got robbed by my best friend and abandoned by my family. Classic origin story, right? He didn't smile. "That's not funny, Alan. You got done dirty twice." I shrugged. "Yeah, well, it's life. Everyone's got a story." He stared at me for a few seconds. "You still got that guy's name?" I looked up from my coffee. "Eric. Why? You still got his info? Email, number, anything?" "Probably somewhere," I said, a little confused. He leaned back. "Send it to me." I laughed. "What are you going to do? Track him down yourself?" Connor didn't laugh back. "Maybe you focus on your work. Let me find this man." The seriousness in his tone made me pause. "Connor, I appreciate it, but you don't have to." "I know I don't have to," he said, "but I want to. I hate thieves. Always have. The world only works if a man's word means something." I studied him for a second. "You're serious?" He nodded. "Dead serious." I tried to play it off. "What, you got a secret FBI team in your basement or something?" He smirked. "Something like that. You'd be surprised who owes me favors." "Look, I'm not asking for revenge," I said. "I just want to move on." "Then think of it as cleaning up unfinished business," he said calmly. "If someone took from you, they'll keep taking from others. You get justice, they get what's coming." He dropped a 20 on the table for the check and stood up. "Send me the info tonight. I'll take care of the rest." I sat there for a few seconds after he left, stirring my coffee and wondering what the hell just happened. Connor wasn't the type to joke about stuff like that. And honestly, I didn't know what shocked me more, that he believed me after hearing my story or that he actually cared enough to do something about it. That night, I went home, opened my laptop and dug through old files until I found Eric's last known contact info. his old email, his last phone number, the fake business name he registered under. I typed it all out in an email to Connor with a short message. Not sure what you plan to do with this, but here you go. Thanks for caring, old man. 5 minutes later, he replied with just one line. If someone took from you, we'll make sure they pay for it. I leaned back in my chair, staring at that sentence. I didn't know what he meant, and honestly, I didn't think anything would come from it, but something about that message hit different. For the first time in a long time, I felt like someone was actually on my side. Months rolled by and life finally stopped feeling like a boxing match. Jobs came steady, clients paid on time, and I started building a real reputation. My calendar was full for weeks ahead. I even got to hire a part-timer, a kid from town who reminded me of myself, minus the trauma. My debt was shrinking fast, and for once, the future didn't look like a dark hallway. Connor still called once or twice a week, checking in about projects or just chatting about work. Sometimes he'd stop by unannounced, standing in the doorway with 2 coffees like we were old buddies. You've got a good head on your shoulders, he told me once. Don't waste it trying to prove yourself to the wrong people. I didn't realize how much those words stuck until the morning he called and said very calmly, "Found him." I froze mid-sandpaper stroke. "Found who?" "Your old partner." I set the sandpaper down. "You're kidding." "Wish I were. He's working under a fake name in Reno. Same business type, same style. My guy checked state records, registered 6 months after he disappeared on you." I sat there, heart thumping like I'd just run a mile. "So what now?" Connor's tone didn't change. "Now we make it right. I'm sending you an address. Be at my office tomorrow morning." The next day I showed up at his company headquarters, an old brick building with a huge wooden sign that read, Dunhill and Company. Connor greeted me at the door. "Alan, glad you made it. Come on, there's someone I want you to meet." He led me into a conference room where 2 people were waiting, a sharp-looking lawyer in a gray suit and a woman around my age with a folder under her arm. "This is my daughter, Sarah," Connor said. "She handles the legal and operations side for me." Sarah smiled, confident but warm. "I've heard a lot about your work," she said, shaking my hand. "Dad's impressed. That's not easy." I laughed. "He hides it well." Connor grinned but didn't deny it. "She's the one who will walk you through how we handle this. Sit down." I signed everything they put in front of me. The next few weeks were a blur of calls, filings, and updates from Sarah. She handled everything like a machine, organized, precise, and fierce when she needed to be. We talked more with each visit. At first it was about the case, but soon it turned into casual banter, favorite movies, travel spots, who could survive longer without caffeine. She won. She had Connor's confidence, but her own kind of calm, like nothing could rattle her. Meanwhile, the case moved faster than I expected. Connor's lawyer was relentless. Within 2 months, Eric, my ex-partner, was cornered. The evidence was airtight. Emails, contracts, even photos of him presenting my designs under his fake company name. Instead of dragging it to trial, he caved fast. Our lawyer pushed him into a settlement. A few weeks later, the check cleared, enough to clear my debts completely and still have breathing room. I stared at the final numbers, half laughing, half shaking. Connor clapped me on the shoulder. "Told you hard work pays off when you stop running after people who don't deserve you." I smiled. "Guess you were right." Sarah grinned too. "He loves being right. Don't let it go to his head." "I'm standing right here," Connor said dryly, then added, "You two should grab lunch and celebrate. I've got meetings." That's how our first lunch happened. Just me and Sarah, at a little place down the street. By the time we finished eating, I realized I hadn't thought about my parents or Eric once. For the first time in years, I was just content. Over the next few months, Connor kept me busy with more contracts, bigger, better ones. His clients started hiring me directly. Sarah and I kept in touch, sometimes for business, sometimes just to talk. A few weeks later, the repayment check came through. I sat at my desk holding it like proof that everything I'd gone through had a point. Debt-free, clean slate. Now I was up, taller than ever. Connor's voice echoed in my head. "You focus on the work. Let me handle the rest." He did. And in the process, he gave me something better than money. He gave me back my fight. After that, things just kept moving up. My workshop was booked months ahead, and half my clients came through Connor's network. Word got around fast. That carpenter who builds everything from scratch and never misses a deadline. Over the next year, the jobs kept rolling in and the savings finally stacked up. I wasn't rich, but I was finally living without checking my account every other hour. By then, I'd moved into a real house. I never went out of my way to tell people about my success. But word travels, especially in families that used to ignore you. First, it was a random message from an aunt I hadn't heard from in years. Saw your name on that magazine article. So proud of you. Then a cousin followed me on social media. And then, of course, the phone rang. It was a regular Thursday evening. I'd just finished sealing a new table and was cleaning up when my phone lit up. Mom. I stared at it for a long second. A year ago, that name would have sent me straight into an emotional tornado. But now all I felt was mild curiosity. I answered. Alan, she said immediately, voice shaky. Oh, thank God you picked up. Hey, Mom, I said flatly. Been a while. It has. I know, she said quickly, almost out of breath. Listen, we really need to talk. That sentence, we need to talk. The same way she'd said it before telling me they were giving Kyle $100,000 for a house. My stomach tightened out of habit, but I stayed calm. What's going on? It's your father, she said, sniffling. He lost his job. The company went under, completely bankrupt. We've been trying to keep up with the mortgage, but we can't. And Kyle's... What about Kyle? I interrupted. He's in trouble too, she said. His mortgage is behind, and they might take his house next month. We're doing everything we can, but... She trailed off. So you're calling to ask for money, I said, cutting straight through her sentence. There was a long pause. We thought maybe you could help. Just until we get back on our feet. You've done so well for yourself, Alan. Everyone says so. I leaned back against the wall, staring at the floor. So, let me get this straight, I said slowly. When I came to you after Eric robbed me blind, when I was begging for help, what was it you said again? Her voice cracked. Alan, please. No, I remember, I said, keeping my voice calm. You said, just because you helped us doesn't mean we have to help you. Those were your words, right? She started crying softly. That was different. We didn't know how bad it was for you. You knew enough, I said. I told you I was drowning. You just didn't care because Kyle wasn't the one struggling. Don't say that, she said. You're twisting things. No, I'm not, I said. You made it very clear who was worth helping. The silence on the line stretched. I could hear her breathing unevenly, like she was trying not to sob. Every single time I showed up for them, no questions asked. And the one time I needed them, they turned their backs. I'm sorry, she said finally, barely above a whisper. Your father, he doesn't know I'm calling, he's ashamed. We never thought things would get this bad. Yeah, I said quietly. Neither did I. Alan, please. We could lose everything. Then maybe you'll understand how I felt, I said. There was a pause. She didn't say anything, and for once I didn't fill the silence. I just let it hang there between us. Heavy, but honest. Finally, she said, So you're not going to help us? No, I said simply. Even if I wanted to, I wouldn't. Because I learned something the hard way. You don't fix people who only call you when they're desperate. Tell Dad I hope he figures it out, I said finally. But this isn't my problem anymore. Alan. Goodbye, Mom. I hung up. For a few seconds, I just stood there staring at the phone. I expected to feel guilt or maybe satisfaction. Instead, there was nothing. Just peace. Like a weight had finally been lifted off my shoulders. I walked outside onto the porch. The evening sky was turning orange. The air smelled like rain, and Sarah was sitting there typing on her laptop. She looked up. Everything okay? I nodded. Yeah, just old noise calling to see if I still listen. She smiled softly. And do you? Not anymore. She set her laptop aside and reached out her hand. I took it, feeling grounded in a way I hadn't in years. Inside, my phone buzzed again. Same number. I let it ring until it stopped. They'd made their choices years ago. And now, so had I. For the first time since I could remember, I didn't feel like the forgotten son or the failure. I felt free. Then one afternoon, I got a message from an aunt, one of those relatives who used to talk to my parents every week but hadn't spoken to me in years. Her text just said, Heard about your folks. Guess karma finally came around. I frowned, confused. What do you mean? A few hours later, another cousin called. Man, you haven't heard? He said. Your dad's company bankruptcy hit them hard. They lost the house. Bank took it last month. I sat there silent. What about Kyle? I asked. Your golden boy ran off. They'd put him on the account to help with bills, and he drained what was left of your dad's retirement fund before disappearing. No one's heard from him in weeks. Your parents are basically living in a rental now, and the rest of the family wants nothing to do with them. Words out about how they treated you. I didn't even know how to respond. I wasn't happy or angry, just done. Like I was listening to the ending of a story that stopped mattering to me a long time ago. Thanks for letting me know, I said finally. But honestly, I don't need updates on them. Yeah, I get that, my cousin said. Just figured you'd want to know the universe balanced the scales. When I hung up, I sat in my truck for a while staring at the steering wheel. They'd spent years pretending to be the perfect family, two-story house, picture-perfect holidays, bragging about Kyle's responsible choices. All that gone. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like gravity. Things finally falling where they were supposed to. Over the next few months, life for me and Sarah just kept getting better. We saved enough to buy a piece of land about 40 minutes outside the city. 5 acres surrounded by trees and silence. The kind of place where you could actually hear the wind and forget what stress sounded like. Connor showed up one weekend unannounced as usual, with a thermos of coffee and that proud look he got when he didn't want to admit he was proud. So, this is where you've been hiding, he said, looking around. Trying to build something quiet, I said. For once, he nodded. Looks good. You've come a long way, Alan. Most people would have given up. Yeah, I said. Guess stubbornness finally paid off. He chuckled. Your dad ever teach you that? I looked up at the half-built roof. No, but maybe it's better that way. He didn't argue, just sipped his coffee and said, You did what real men do. You built your own peace. By the following summer, the cabin was done. It wasn't big or fancy, just 2 rooms, a small porch, and windows that framed the sunset perfectly. Sarah and I started spending nights there, bringing food, candles, and a small radio. It became our place, our quiet bubble away from everything else. One evening, Connor came by again, this time with a bottle of sparkling juice and a grin. For the housewarming, he said. Can't have a cabin without a toast. We sat outside as the sun dipped behind the trees. Sarah leaned on my shoulder and Connor raised his cup. To new beginnings, he said. To peace, I added. He smiled. Same thing, really. As night fell, fireflies flickered across the trees, and the creek nearby murmured in the dark. I thought about my parents, not with anger, just with clarity. They'd spent their lives chasing image and control, while I'd found happiness in sawdust, sweat, and simplicity. I didn't need them to apologize or see my worth anymore. I'd already proven it, not through words or revenge, but through the life I built without them. Sarah squeezed my hand. You thinking about them? She asked softly. Yeah, I admitted. But not the way I used to. She nodded, resting her head against me. You know, you didn't just rebuild your life. You rebuilt yourself. Maybe, I said with a small smile. Or maybe I just stopped building for the wrong people. The crickets filled the silence after that, and I let it stay. It was the kind of peace I used to think only other people got to have, but now it was mine. Earned, not given. As the last light faded, I looked at the cabin, at Sarah, at the man I'd become, and it all hit me how far I'd come from that moldy apartment and that phone call where my own mother told me I wasn't worth helping. They lost everything trying to fake stability. I found peace by starting from nothing. I leaned back, took a deep breath, and smiled to myself. I didn't win by revenge, I said quietly. I won by moving on.